Hello there, thrill seekers. I spent a good deal of time, literally hours, yesterday trying to write a new chapter for my book. That's, I don't know when it'll come out, but my book that'll be the next one coming out. Now, I've already sent this book to the publishers. They're already working on a cover design. Don't ask me when it'll come out. I don't know. But it's done. That's the point. But I had this feeling that I'd left something out, and so I tried to write a chapter, and I don't know. I feel like it didn't go well, but I'm just going to talk through the stuff that I wrote for you today here on this video channel, and I don't know if it'll get anywhere or if it'll inspire me to write it or if I'll just give up anyway, but here we go. Here it is. Okay. There's a very famous poem called Shinjinmei, which means inscription on faith in mind. There's various translations, but that's the one I'm going with for this video. It's covered very thoroughly in this book by Jean-Philippe Coupet, Belly of the Dragon, which unfortunately I've not read yet. I've read parts of it. They sent it to me like a year ago, and I still haven't read it. No smoke on this book? Anyway, no shade on this book, or whatever you say in English, as being bad or anything. I'm just reading a lot of books, and I haven't gotten to this one. But it's a whole book about that poem. That's the point I'm trying to make. And the beginning of the poem has these very famous lines. "The great way is not difficult, just avoid picking and choosing." And there are various ways to translate this. One version says, "The perfect way knows no difficulties except that it refuses to make preferences." The one that's used in Belly of the Dragon says, "Entering the way is not difficult, but you must have no love or hate or choose or reject." That's kind of funky grammar, but since the writer is French, maybe that's why. But anyway, the actual lines in Chinese I'm showing you on the screen right now, and if I had to translate these characters word by word, literally, here's what I'd get. Perfect way, not difficult, just hate picking, choosing. In fact, the last two characters, when I looked them up, had the very same meaning, to choose. Erabu. Erabu is the generic Japanese word for choose, so it says erabu, but it has two different Chinese characters, so picking and choosing is sort of a good translation, because that's also two ways of saying kind of the same thing. So just avoid picking and choosing. Dogen talks about this in his expensive record that I mentioned in a previous video, I think the last video, on page 325. Garudas Choose to Eat Dragons is their title. Remember, Dogen didn't give these titles, but it's Dharma Hole Discourse number 371. Here is a saying. The third ancestor, great teacher Jianji Senchan, or Senkan, not sure, in Inscription of Faith in Mind, said, "The supreme way is not difficult, only disdain picking and choosing." So there's another translation of the first line for you. Great Assembly. Have you ever studied the third ancestor's meaning? Tell me, what is the third ancestor's meaning? Passing through 3 kalpas. Remember, a kalpa is just an incredibly long period of time. Without fail, we arrive. Passing through numberless kalpas, without fail, we arrive. Without arising from our seat, without fail, we arrive. Without arising in a single moment, without fail, we arrive. Therefore, the third ancestor said, "The supreme way is not difficult. Simply to disdain picking and choosing is like a Garuda not eating anything but dragons." So what's a Garuda? Okay, let's answer that question with the footnote that they give. A Garuda is a mythological Indian bird that is a guardian of the Dharma, often presented in the Buddha's assembly in sutras. Garudas are famed for eating dragons. And then there's a little thing about linguistics, and then they say, in this Dharma Hall discourse, Dogen is pointing out a paradox in the inscription on faith in mind. Disdaining or avoiding is a kind of preference, a kind of picking and choosing. But for Garudas, it is simply natural to eat dragons. For Buddhist practitioners, it is simply natural to follow the way. That is what Taigen Dan Leighton and Shohaku Okumura have to say about that. And Dogen also talks about it in another section of this book. Let me find it for you. It's on page 422, and it is called The Pickiness of Garudas. That, again, is not Dogen's title. That is Shohaku Okumura and Dan Layton's title, but kind of interesting choice. And it is Dharma Hall Discourse number 472. Here is a statement. The third ancestor, great teacher Jianji Senkan, said, "The supreme way is not difficult, simply dislike picking and choosing." Notice that they translate it even differently from how they translated it 100 pages ago, or whatever it was. Upon hearing this, people who do not understand might say, "All dharmas are without good and bad, every action is neither evil nor upright. Simply trust your nature and stroll along. Following conditions, let go of everything. Therefore, with all good and bad, or evil and upright, do not pick or choose, but just go on your way." That's what Dogen is saying is not the way to understand this. And here's another way to misunderstand this, according to Dogen. He says, another may say, in order not to do this so-called picking or choosing, do not speak using words. This can be done by simply making a circle, holding up a whisk. I don't have a whisk to hold up. Pounding a monk's staff, throwing down the staff, clapping hands, giving a yell, holding up a sitting cushion, or raising a fist. These are all kind of things that Zen masters sometimes do to make a statement without making a statement in words. And sometimes their students try to imitate that. Views like this do not depart from the cave of common beings. So that's his way of dissing those views. Suppose someone were to ask me, Eihei being Eihei Dogen himself, what is the point of simply dislike, picking, and choosing? I would say to him, a Garuda does not eat anything but raw dragons. The bodhisattva next in line for Buddhahood, i.e. Maitreya, is not born except in Tushita heaven. And Tushita heaven is a realm of meditative bliss in the realm of desire, where Maitreya, who is supposed to be the next Buddha predicted by Shakyamuni, although people dispute whether that actually happened or not, blah, 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 who cares. Anyway, he lives in this Tushita heaven, and that's where he is. And the stuff about dragons is the same. I like the fact that the dragons are raw in the second version. When I was in school at Nairobi International School in Africa, the older kids used to have a phrase that they used to each other, which was "eat it raw." They'd say "eat it raw." These like junior high school kids, because I was like an elementary school kid. I never heard anybody else say "eat it raw" as a kind of insult, but that's what they would say. So there you go. So that is what Dogen says, and I'm scrolling through to see what I say. So Dogen liked allusions to mythology, and his audience would have understood those allusions, so it made sense. But we can't talk about Garudas and dragons and expect for people to listen to us these days. So I'm going to see what I can say about it. We all feel like we have the power to choose what we do, and the fact that there are Buddhist precepts would certainly seem to indicate that Buddhism favors the view that we have free choice. We have some kind of free choice in what we do. Otherwise, why would there be a precept against stealing if you were kind of predestined to steal? Why would you need to take a vow not to steal, right? So we do have an idea that there's something like free will operating. Now, on the other hand, Dogen criticizes this idea that avoiding preferences means just do what you want and have no regard for good or bad. He doesn't like that. So I guess that's not really on the other hand, that's sort of on the same hand. That's the Buddhist view, is you follow the precepts. That's important. And we notice that Taigen Dan Layton and Okumura Roshi have pointed out the idea that avoiding preferences is a kind of avoiding, so it's a kind of preference anyway. But I have an answer for that one, and it comes from a conversation I had with Tim McCarthy, my first Zen teacher. I asked him about this question, is the goal of having no goal still a goal? This is an argument people make a lot when they hear the idea of goalless practice. And he said, well, yeah, semantically that's true. The goal of having no goal is still a goal semantically. But in actual practice, the goal of having no goal is totally different from the goal of any other goal that you might have, like the goal of waiting out those trucks until they stop making noise, because I would never get a video done if I did that. But anyway, so the avoiding of preferences, yeah, you could semantically say it's also a kind of preference, but it doesn't matter. The avoiding preferences is different from having a preference. Now, let me back up a little bit and say that when Buddhists talk about preferences, especially in this kind of context, they're not talking about liking vanilla ice cream better than strawberry ice cream, or they're not talking about the fact that I thought my Ibanez Black Eagle bass was the best sounding bass I ever had, so I definitely preferred that over any other bass, and I really regret ever selling that thing. But you do what you gotta do. They're not saying it's a sin that you like the first Jaws movie better than any of the sequels, for example. So that's not what they're talking about when they're talking about preferences. What they're talking about when they say preferences, especially in a context like this, is the view that life could be any other way than exactly the way it is. And we all carry that view around, and it frustrates us in life. Everybody has this. I have it too. Everybody has it. I don't think that as long as you're living as a human being, you're ever going to be fully rid of that as a thing that comes up in your mind, that I wish things were different, or things could have been different if I had done this, like things could have been different if I hadn't sold that Black Eagle bass, for example. But I did, and here's the way it is. So that's the way it is, and the way I want it to be of not selling the bass is not a real thing, right? So let me give you like a concrete example. You probably thought that you had some choice in watching this video. Like you clicked on this video and you chose to watch it. In a sense, that is true, but there's a whole lot of other stuff that went into it. Like the fact that you were inclined to even watch a video like this presupposes a whole range of things that happened to you before this happened, over which you had no control. And the fact that you're stuck, with it this long, I don't know how many minutes in we are, it also says something about the past. So let me, take the heat off you and put it on myself. The fact that I read Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Shunryu Suzuki, which is the first Zen book I ever read, I might have thought I had a choice in that, but there was a lot of stuff that went into that. I was exposed, for example, to the Hindu culture when I was living in Africa as a child, and so I had this inclination to look at that. My family has this terrible genetic disorder running in it, and I was very much interested in what happens after we die, or what can we do with this life at that age, so that had a lot to do with it. I didn't have control over any of that. I could say that I voluntarily signed up for the class called Zen Buddhism at Kent State University, in which that book was required reading. But even that, if Kent State University hadn't put that course in the syllabus, the catalog, I wouldn't have had that choice. If Tim hadn't chosen to move back to Ohio after years in New Mexico and California, he wouldn't have been there to teach it, so I had no control over that. So it's, even when I say something belongs to me and is my personality and is me, it's all so much that I had no control over it that I can't say it's me at all. It's all interconnected, deeply interconnected. And the connections I just laid out for you right now are just the tiny superficial, gloss on the top. There's so much more that it's not me doing anything. So picking and choosing is giving you the idea that there's a me who can pick and choose, but there isn't. You're just kind of flowing along with things, and we all are. Now, the beauty of this is that if you understand that you really had no choice in anything that you do, then you don't feel guilty about anything that you did, and you don't blame anyone. You can't hate anyone else for what they did, because they're just as choiceless as you are. The problem with saying that is people will immediately jump to, and if I didn't say this, I would definitely get this in the comments section. Somebody would say, do you mean the Nazis are not responsible for the atrocities that they did? And no, I don't mean the Nazis are not responsible, and I don't mean that I am not responsible for what I did. But my responsibility, which I take very seriously, is something other than this sort of emotional attachment to a me substance who can pick and choose. It's a different sort of thing entirely. So getting back to Dogen, it's a Garuda's job, or Garuda, however you pronounce it, I don't know, to eat dragons. That's its position in the mythical ecosystem. It eats dragons. So dragons don't have any reason to hate Garudas for eating them, but they have every reason to avoid Garudas, right? So that's the situation we're all kind of in. And that's why part of the Buddhist way is to follow the precepts, to try to understand what the universe wants from us and to do only that, which is much easier said than done. And because it's much easier said than done, and because there is no way for the rational thinking mind to figure out what the giant interconnected universe wants the individual to do, that is why we do Zazen, to become more in tune with our intuitive sense and see what needs to be done. So that's what I wrote, kind of, sort of, in my chapter. I don't know if it's any good. Maybe you can tell me if you like it or hate it. Or you can send me a donation if you want. I am offering this for free. Remember that. I'm offering this for free, but my only way of making a living is through your donations. So if you go to hardcorezen.info/donate, you can find my links to Patreon and PayPal, and that's my way of making a living. So go to hardcorezen.info/donate, and that's where you can make a donation, but you don't have to, so don't if you don't want to. See you around. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Hey Ziggy, how you doing? Do you avoid picking and choosing? Do you want to avoid picking and choosing? Yeah, you'd rather not be in this video. That would be your choice, huh? See you later, Ziggy.